According to multiple reports, Bo Bichette is on the trade block if the Toronto Blue Jays decide to go in that direction in this year's deadline. The star shortstop has been anything but a star this year for the Blue Jays, and the season overall has been a huge disappointment for the fan base and the team alike. So we'll break down a few potential landing spots and much more in this episode of 3 Up, 3 Down. What's up, everybody? Welcome into 3 Up, 3 Down. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, and today we're going to be talking about the Toronto Blue Jays and the disappointing season that they've been having thus far. And front and center of that is their star shortstop, Bo Bichette, who has looked anything but Bo Bichette in this season. And it has been disappointing. As a Blue Jay fan myself, it's been a very up and down year. Whenever something else is working, something else goes wrong for this Blue Jays team. And that's been the story of the past 2 years for them. When the offense is working well, the pitching starts to go downhill and vice versa. So maybe this team is not the World Series contender that some people may have thought, or at least Blue Jay fans may have thought. And maybe they're not even a playoff team at this point. They're sitting a couple of games under 500. They just swept the White Sox, but the White Sox are the worst team in Major League Baseball, so I don't know if that's anything to write home about. And the Jays are looking to be headed in a direction where they might have to retool at this year's deadline. They have some players that are going to be expiring contracts, like Danny Jansen, who has been their best hitter, and Jimmy Garcia, who has been their best reliever. So they could definitely garner some assets in exchange for the services of those two guys, and it would make sense for them to go ahead and do that. But Bo Bichette has been a name that has been constantly brought up here, and he's a free agent after next season. He doesn't exactly seem enamored to be in Toronto, so the mind starts to wander, and you start to think, where could he potentially go and make a huge impact? He's a very good player. Let's not get it twisted. Okay, but let's take a look at some potential landing spots here. So this was tweeted out by Bleacher Report. Take it as you may. I usually take those reports with a grain of salt. But the top 10 landing spots, the Giants, the Mariners, the Dodgers, and the Guardians, and then the Braves at number 5. So two teams that stand out to me here are the Giants and the Braves. Those two teams make a lot of sense because the Giants have been playing really good baseball lately. They've been picking up wins, and I don't think they're going to challenge for the NL West title, but the NL is wide open now. It's more wide open than it's ever been in the past couple of years because of the injuries to the Braves, because of teams just not performing up to their standards. So I could definitely see the Braves taking a run at Bo Bichette and bolstering that shortstop position. But the other one that makes sense, the one that makes the most sense to me, is the Giants. And I say that because the Giants are just playing real well right now, and they could use an extra bat in that lineup. And I think Bo Bichette's skill set is really well suited to San Francisco and that big ballpark that they play in. So look, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And this was the trade package that was proposed not by San Francisco, but this was the report that I kept seeing on Twitter. So San Francisco gets Bo Bichette. The Toronto Blue Jays get shortstop Marco Luciano, who's the number 1 prospect in the Giants system, number 54 overall in Major League Baseball, and then left-handed pitcher Carson Whisenhunt. So the tweet goes on to say, if Luciano is more of a project than the Giants have time and patience for right now, then trading him isn't the worst idea. He'd be able to step right into Bichette's shoes in Toronto, which would also get a near MLB ready hurler in Whisenhunt. So I see that, and as a Blue Jay fan, my immediate instinct is I do this trade. I absolutely do this trade. Now, there are questions about Marco Luciano and his ability to play shortstop at a high level defensively, but there are no questions about his bat. Maybe you could question his power. Hasn't really shown too much of it in his minor league career, but his contact ability, his eye at the plate, I look at those factors, and I definitely think that he's a player that can be a really good major leaguer for a long time. Will he be as good as Bo Bichette? I don't know. That remains to be seen, but it's possible. And Whisenhunt, even though he's struggling this year for the Giants in the minors, he's got really good stuff. He's a lefty. His Ks per nine is pretty high, and maybe he's not quite ready for AAA yet, but he killed it in AA last season. So I look at all that if I'm the Blue Jays, and for a team that has a very bad farm system like the Jays do, this is a trade that you got to go out and make. If that's on the table from the Giants, I don't know how much better you're going to get than that on the open market. And it makes sense. It just makes sense for the Blue Jays to go out and make that trade. I like Luciano as a player. I think he's going to be really good, but I do believe that he profiles better as an outfielder. But at the same time, you can't just get a player like that without giving up one of your established stars on your team right away. So it's going to take Bo Bichette to get a player like Luciano in return. And for the Giants' sake, it just makes perfect sense. They're a lot better than they thought they would be. They spent a ton of money in the offseason on Matt Chapman, Jung-Hoo Lee, Blake Snell as well. So they went for it. They took a home run swing at this, and now they're reaping the fruits of their labor in a sense. Like, they're right there in the mix. They're second place in the NL West. Obviously, we know that the Dodgers are probably going to be the number one team by season's end, but as I mentioned before in the intro, it's wide open, and there's a chance there for the Giants to be the third best team in the National League. It's not that far-fetched to think about. So we know that it's the Phillies and the Dodgers at the top right now. Those are the two best teams, maybe not even the National League, in all of Major League Baseball. You could throw the Yankees in the mix there as well. But those three teams there are the best in Major League Baseball, and then after that, it's pretty wide open. Throw the Orioles in there as well. They've been a really nice story to start off this year. But there's no reason for me, if I'm the Giants, to just hold on to my prospects if I spent that much money in the offseason and I think Bo Bichette is available. Because let's not forget that Bo Bichette is one of the best shortstops in baseball. Even though he hasn't shown it this year, he's shown some flashes lately. You look at those hit totals and just the OPS, he's been one of the more consistent performers at the shortstop position year in, year out. You know that you're getting a decent amount of power from him. He hits a lot of doubles. You're getting okay defense. I'd say slightly below average defense, but he's been taking strides in that regard year in, year out. And look at the hit totals. And I know that's not always indicative of a player being a good player, but what that does tell me is that he's consistent and he's in the lineup pretty much every day. And if he didn't miss more than 25 games last season, he probably would have been the hits leader yet again. Like, he's that kind of player. He's just consistent, puts the bat on the ball, makes hard contact, as evident here by his baseball savant. Like, this is the baseball savant profile that we saw last season from Bo Bichette. And that's what he's been doing consistently for the majority of his career. You see the defense is not great, the arm isn't great, the speed isn't great, but he's an elite hitter at the shortstop position. And he does play shortstop, so his hitting gets another uptick in that regard. So it makes sense for the Giants to go out and make this trade. And I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. I would not be shocked if it happened, because I see that and it makes sense for both teams. I believe that if the Blue Jays make this trade, they're signifying that they're in a retool, and then Jimmy Garcia is going to follow. Danny Jansen is probably going to follow, impending free agent. And that's when they start to build up their farm system and start to make a run at this thing for the second time, because we've seen this core for the Blue Jays run its course in a sense. They've gone at it for the past 3-4 years, and it just hasn't worked out for them. And I don't know if Bo Bichette wants to be here long term. So if you can't sign him to a long-term deal, if you're Ross Atkins, try to get some assets for him. And I don't think you could do much better than those two players getting back in return from the San Francisco Giants. But I wanted to touch on one more thing before we wrapped up here, and that is the City Connect jerseys. They were revealed yesterday by the Toronto Blue Jays. First initial thoughts, I like them. I like them a lot. And I was skeptical at first. I saw the leaks. I wasn't sure how they were going to look in good lighting. But Jose Barrios is really making those look good. And and he's fitting quite nicely into them. So they're going to wear them tonight against the Pittsburgh Pirates, 3-game set. And I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to seeing how they mesh with the colors of the seats at the Rogers Center, with the new renovations. I think this was the plan all along. So even though the team hasn't been performing well, all the extracurricular stuff, it's been on the right path for the Blue Jays. So we'll take that if we are Blue Jays Nation. But thank you guys so much for making it this far. Appreciate it. I was your host, Peter Vryonis, and we'll be back on Monday with another upload. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, like, and comment on this video, and we'll see you all tomorrow, Monday.